Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist. Today, we're talking about something that I think people all over can relate to. So many people have this problem, really, regardless of where you live. And I'm talking about overspending, living beyond your means, sort of spending money you don't have as a pattern. We're talking about getting in the habit of kind of accruing debt, buying things and objects and really things that you really can't afford. And we're not talking about just a one-time thing. We're talking about like a habit and racking up a lot of times some debt that is like a problem, has honestly become a problem with the capital P. And by the way, before I go further, when I say that this is a problem that I know that people have everywhere, I always think it's interesting to hear where people are. So, you watching, put a comment in the chat if you'd like to share with others where you're watching from. I always think it's so interesting. The truth is, a person can be an overspender, a compulsive spender, spend money that you really don't have in a big city like New York. And believe it, even in a small town too, we can all find ways to spend money that we don't have, to live beyond our means. So if this is a problem you have, where are you watching this from? It's kind of interesting to hear where people are. If you'd like, you can share that in the chat. All right, now let's get into it. This issue is a behavioral rut, a behavior pattern, okay? Compulsively spending, overspending, spending money that you really just don't have. This is a part of a much larger issue that I call being stuck in some type of dysfunction, getting stuck in some type of life dysfunction. People have different types of dysfunction. And for you, if this is one of the issues that you have, this is one of the areas in your life where the dysfunction shows up. And again, I just want to say, you're not alone. I think as a clinical psychologist, I can tell you it's one of the most common problems that people deal with, this particular type of dysfunction. So let me just get into the why of it. There's a few basic reasons why somebody gets stuck in a pattern of spending money they don't have. And one is just about emotional regulation. The person comes to use spending money, buying things, buying goods and services. They come to do that to self-medicate or treat a particular feeling that they have. Usually it's people feel like they have some sort of uncomfortable feeling. Maybe they feel anxious or they feel depressed. Maybe they just deal with this sort of chronic sense of boredom. Maybe they feel a little empty. It could be any number of types of feelings that people have. It could also be beliefs that a person has, that they deserve this, that they have to put up with so much stuff in their life that they don't like, that this is how they treat themselves. They may tell themselves certain beliefs like, this will make me happy, that once I do this, I'll finally feel relaxed, or I'll finally feel like my life is in order, is in control. These are some ways that people try to emotionally regulate, to balance how they feel internally. Okay, that's one reason, emotional regulation. Now, of course, spending money you don't have, living beyond your means, it's not a good way to regulate how you feel internally. But people can get stuck in it. And it's a pattern that's really hard to get out of. It's not easy to just slip right out of it. Now, another reason why people get stuck in sort of overspending patterns, spending a lot, or impulsive spending, compulsive spending, it can actually trigger dopamine reward pathways, that this can actually stimulate activity in the brain, neurons in the brain that are associated with feeling good and strong and powerful. But again, these are negative ways to stimulate that feeling when it's not something that you can afford to do, okay? The third reason that people can turn to overspending, compulsive spending, when they really can't afford it, has to do with identity. that somehow their self-image and identity has gotten hooked to whatever it is that they tend to be using the money on. So if it's services like eating out and vacations, for the person, they might have a certain image of themselves that they want to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, in that way. And they want to live a lifestyle that looks on the surface flashy and exciting and adventurous. They may want to share photos on social media, and wow, it can look kind of glamorous. So that may be one of the kind of false identities that this kind of overspending can relate to. Another person, for example, may have an identity where their home environment looks a certain way, or maybe their clothing wardrobe, or maybe for them, it's all the tools and toys in their garage that they feel like they deserve. And they have that image of themselves that they want the best of everything. And they love the way that it looks, and they also love having all the access to it. They have that image that becomes a part of themselves. So sometimes these identity issues are one of the things that gets really triggered. And once you've got a formed identity based on things that you can buy, it can be very difficult to undo it. Now, those are a few psychological, really kind of clinical reasons that I just explained why somebody can get stuck in dysfunction of overspending. But in just really simple terms, why does somebody get stuck in this dysfunction? Usually because something is broken. Something is broken in their life. Something is broken either in how they feel inside, either something is broken in maybe a relationship that they have, and they are trying to tell themselves that it's not broken, and they try to fill themselves up and fill the void in this other way. Maybe there are dreams or goals that the person has that are going unfulfilled, and it's almost like their goals and their dreams are broken. Broken. So, buying something or going out for meals and dinners or having vacations that really can't be afforded, that can, for the moment, give a dose of immediate gratification and temporarily fill that sense of dis-ease, not feeling at ease inside. Of course, though, it doesn't last. A lot of times, our behavior gets broken because there's something else. There's something a little bigger psychologically that we feel is broken. And we have to go about figuring out what that is. Sometimes we have to get really honest with ourselves. What might be broken in my life? What might be broken in my life? And it's certainly not a thought you want to have. That's a big question to ask yourself. Nobody wants to feel bad about themselves. Nobody certainly wants to feel bad about their life. But actually, sometimes when you can actually just start to get honest about those true feelings that you have deep down, then you can start to actually feel a little sense of freedom. Oh my gosh, you can start to actually feel a little sense of freedom from what you have been sometimes trying to run from or hide from with spending money that you really don't have. It's really running a lot of times from something bigger, running from something bigger. And you know what? Running away actually from ourselves, from our true fears, from our true feelings. Running away takes a lot of energy. And you don't have to waste energy. You don't have to burn up energy like that. You can start by just being honest with yourself about what might be, let's say, a little broken in your life. We can handle what might be a little broken in our lives because when we can see it, then we can go about trying to actually work on fixing it. But we can't try to fix anything when we're not even being honest with ourselves that something is truly broken in the first place. Now, one thing that I would just want to share before I close on this topic is one of the best things that I have found in my clinical work people can do for themselves with this problem is to share what the true problem is, to disclose what the true problem is to some friends of theirs. Okay. Now, a lot of times when you've heard the term come out of the closet, a lot of times people always think about that term in terms of sexuality, coming out of the closet and disclosing what your particular sexuality may be. But actually, sometimes it can be helpful to come out of the closet and tell someone in your life about the problem that you have a problem with overspending, that maybe you have come into a problem of kind of racking up some real debt because of this problem. Now, just a note that when you tell some of your friends, for example, about this, you can say it a couple of different ways, and watch the way I say it because it's super important. You can tell a few friends and you can kind of make a joke of it and say, yeah, well, I know it's a little bit more debt than that. And yes, you have told a few people that you have that problem. You have told them. But you know what? When you tell them in that way, you're not emotionally connecting at all with what's true and real, and also how scary the problem actually has become, if you're really honest. In laughing about it, in just making light of it, you are actually disconnecting from the seriousness of it. And actually, it is connecting with the seriousness of that problem when you share with somebody, hey, this is a problem. It's connecting with that seriousness that can actually be what can be helpful in turning the corner and starting the process of saying, I am going to stop the spending. Now, watch this way when you confide to a friend. I have to tell you, it's the problem. It's gotten pretty bad. It's gotten pretty bad. Now, when I said that, I could feel the seriousness of it. If you look at my face as I said it, my face looked serious. In a way, I was quieter when I said it. I dropped the volume of my voice down. It's like when I was saying that sentence, I could feel it so much that I shut out what was going on in the rest of the world in that moment. That's how much I connected with, whoa, I've got a problem here on my hands that I have to deal with. Okay. Now, this is something that you can deal with. I've shared an example about how to kind of start the process of dealing with it and getting unstuck if this is a type of dysfunction that you've gotten stuck in. But I do just want to share that a lot of times, one of the root issues with this, if we look at it clinically, is impulse control. There is a problem with compulsive spending, overspending, a lot of times with impulse control. And one of the best things that a person can do, if this is one of the problems that they have, is to not just find a therapist, but specifically seek out cognitive behavior therapy for impulse control help related to spending. All right. And before I close, I just want to mention too, I have spoken about this specific problem. But if you want to know some of the other things that go along with a problem like this, there are also fears underneath this kind of behavior of compulsive spending, root fears that you may deal with. Some basic feelings that a person who gets stuck in dysfunction can feel. All of those are covered in my previous videos in this series, Why We Stay in Dysfunction. You can find that on my playlist and you can check out all those videos. I sure hope they're helpful.